So yeah, again, thank you for joining us tonight. Just some reminders, please take care of yourself. If you have to step away to use the bathroom, to take a breather, to, walk your dog, which I had to run back in, Sydney. When you were saying, Louis, what do you think? I was like running back in from outside. So shout out to like whoever created these AirPods because I had to run back in. And if you missed anything, just ask in the comments in the chat. What did you miss? This is being recorded, so we will figure out ways to make it available for folks. But just take care of yourself because we need everyone in this for the long haul. Um, yeah. So tonight we are joined from. We have speakers from Power U, Empower You Center for Social Change. Power You is a South Florida based grassroots organization that led a grassroots campaigning to divest cops from cops in schools and invest that money into comprehensive sex education in Miami-Dade, Florida public schools. So our speakers are here. Want to welcome them into this space. If you can give applause, waves, snaps, hugs, and if you can introduce yourself and say a little bit about yourself. Power you.
Hello, everyone. Can folks hear me? Yeah,
Sure
cool.
enough.
Okay. Thank you. Um, so my name is Samantha Daly. My pronouns are she and her. I am the outgoing reproductive justice organizer at Power U. Power U Center for Social Change is our full name. We've been around 20 years, and are youth led and youth directed in terms of the organizing we do. We're very hyper local. We organize in Miami-Dade County, and it is the fourth largest school district in the nation, the largest one in Florida, has over 360,000 young people. So I'm super excited to get into kind of our quest and our experiment, our yearly organizing experiment, because that's what we call it. We're always trying um, and organizing and doing that deep relational organizing around investing in youth resources, supportive resources, and things that the community wants, and divesting from police and punitive measures. Um, so welcome, y'all. First, I want to say welcome. Super happy to be here. Super excited. I did a presentation. Um, I really just spoke about our work a couple months ago with Advocates for Youth, and I'm just excited that folks are like having these conversations and really um, thought partnering and how we're moving forward to really get what we need and our communities need. And so first I want folks, if you are able to put in the chat your name, your pronouns, and one thing you're curious about, interested about learning today. I know that y'all have like gone over like abolition, really talked about the framework that is invest divest, and so I just want to kind of know what brings you here and what informs how you're showing up. So wanted to see where folks are coming in from or how folks are coming into the space. Awesome, Louis. How to organize at the school level? Yes, because it looks a lot different. My organizing was all about how are we talking and identifying targets in the school board, and that looked a lot different than our coalition work, which was state at the state level, which was around like bills and building support or fighting against things like abortion bans and sex education limiting, which is actually a bill that's presently being proposed. So this is very timely. I'm super excited to be here for folks to talk about that. Tara, how to invite others to realize that they have the power to create change. Yes. So interested in hearing, ooh, this is moving super fast. Hearing new ideas about keeping schools safe without police. Yeah, I think I'm an abolitionist and I'm always learning every day, right? And always really moving through trying on what it looks like to actually live in a world without police, what it looks like in things like car accidents, what it looks like for people that to feel safe and feel like they're getting everything they need. And so I think this is a very important conversation, and we're building. Yes, learn the logistics behind divesting. Oh, yes, reproductive health resources. Absolutely, Trinity. Thank you for bringing that. We're a reproductive justice organization. And so in our mission, we're centering Black women, we're centering young people. And first and foremost, we're centering LGBTQ folks because we know that those folks are experts of their experience and really have a nuanced way that I'm excited to get into today. And Izzy, you put organize as a liaison between schools and nonprofits and also to empower others. Yeah, it's definitely some power analysis that's going on as you're organizing with community members and really building and building your base. So thank y'all so much for trying this on. Yes, fight for better sex ed curriculum. I love it, Maria. That's exactly what we did. And so I'm going to get into that. So who is Power You? We're youth directed. We're based in Miami, Florida. We actually started in Overtown and started around organizing adults and then doing birth justice work. So, reproductive justice is all about how we are taking into account the many things that people need to live full lives. And so that's how we started. One of our first major wins was getting dividers for the highway, I-95 in Florida, and specifically Miami, that really decimated the county of Overtown and the community of Overtown. Thanks, Kinjo. So this, I wanted to make sure folks saw like who is Power You. These are organizers. These are young people that are doing the work every day. I'm just here speaking about it. And so I just wanted to make sure folks were aware of who's doing this work. We have Nikki, we have some young people doing our listening campaign, which is really going door to door and talking with community members, being informed by what is happening, right? And getting to learn your neighbors and know your neighbors. That's oftentimes in this age of technology what has been suffering. And so that is very integral into our phases of organizing, which I'm going to get into a little bit later. The bottom center photo is our Black Girls Day at the Capitol, where we're with a representative and we're really just talking. Young people really caucused and identified priorities that they wanted to focus on regarding bills that are proposed. And so that's some of the work that we did. Next slide, Kinjo. These are some more photos. Our Christmas party, we don't just organize, we turn up. Young people doing leading sessions and doing listen campaign. You can go ahead. Great, thank you. So I thought it was important to really talk about the full breadth of what the sex ed campaign is. And so it actually started in 2016, 2015, a group of 3 organizations led by Black women. And when I said led by Black women, that's either Black women holding down like the reproductive justice director or coordinator position, the executive director position. These are women that did not see and in coordination with young people, did not see folks' lived experience, right, being shown and being and really being highlighted. And so that's where the actual ecosystem, which is what we call these 3 organizations, came to be. I came into my role in 2018 and really engaged in this experiment in a way that like steered the direction of our ecosystem. And so our ecosystem is comprised of Miami Worker Center, Power You, Center for Social Change, my organization, and the New Florida Majority, and was led really by Black youth in District 2. And so Miami-Dade County, I talked earlier, has 360,000 young people, and a large organization that is, or a large district that is predominantly Black and Brown is District 2. That's a district our young people go to school, and that's a district we organize most heavily in. Our folks live there, and we really saw a lot of instances where young people were experiencing gender violence and didn't necessarily have access to medically accurate, age-appropriate information on comprehensive sex education, on their options, and information that was unbiased, that was LGBTQ welcoming, that this is true, right? Florida is an abortion, or Florida is an abstinence plus state, excuse me. And so young people oftentimes aren't getting this information. And we saw it twofold of like young people not having access, and then teachers and folks in positions of authority not necessarily feeling comfortable sharing this information. And so we engaged in community listening sessions to highlight demands, but I wanted to be able to show y'all really like what was our process. And so Kendra, if you could click that first link, phases. And I have a couple links in here, y'all. I just wanted y'all to, yes, okay. So this is how we organize at Power U. It is, I'm so sorry for the in the background, but it is true of all of our Invest campaigns, because I organized around comprehensive sex education and addressing gender violence. We are organizer Keynote organized around mental health, right? And divesting from punitive measures and investing in mental health. We also have a Safe Schools campaign and a civic engagement campaign, which is where the listening campaign lies. And so these are our phases. Our recruitment phase really starts, it's phase 5 and also phase 1. It's like the ending and the beginning. So it could be, it kind of flows in and out, right? And then we go into, and that's in the fall, and then we go into orientation in the early part of the year, where young people are going through like deep political education sessions, really understanding the richness and the history behind Power U, and sharing their own experiences also around what has happened in their school environment, harm, their healing, they're being circle trained. We are historically a restorative justice organization, and that's kind of not kind of, definitely an integral part of our rich history. And so young people are circle trained and do hold circles. Then we go into our listening session. So we're talking to community members, we're talking to young people from schools across the county. We're in 9 districts, or we have folks in 9 districts. And so we're talking to folks across those districts. And if you are aware or familiar with Florida, you know that Florida's big. Miami-Dade is huge. It spans north to from Miami Gardens and a little bit north of that, all the way down to Homestead. So it's 9 districts, with folks facing a lot of different socioeconomic statuses, different lived experiences, lots of different privilege, and also a lot of folks being working class. And our folks that we organize with are largely working class and come from working class families. And then we go into mobilizing. So this is when we're doing our community town halls. This is when we're doing our meetings. This is when we're really building to talk about our strategy, to build our base and do structure tests to see if we have the folks that we need in order to show up and show out. And then we review, right? We have sessions where we talk about what worked, what didn't, what have we found in this time, what have we learned from our targets, what are our wins, what maybe aren't our wins, right? And also what we're learning, which has been like very important in this time, because we initially started, when I came to the organization, we were like in an awakening or in a rebirth of our organizing strategy. And so we very much think of it as an experiment, because we were first discussing how it looks or how it feels to go through a whole strategy or a whole phase system, right? And a whole phase experience. And so, yeah, that's how we talk about the experiment. And I want to stop because I feel like I'm going a mile and I'm super excited to be here. For any questions that folks may have, if you would put them in the chat. And feel free to continue to populate the chat with questions or comments or anything throughout the presentation. Kendra, you can go ahead while we wait. Awesome. So this is a part of our leadership committee, and this is some of the breakdowns around their meetings. And the leadership committee is a new iteration that we and a new body that was created last year as folks went through our ladder of membership and stepped into more leadership. And then Kendall, you don't have to go next on that. If you could go next on the slides, that would be great. Okay, and in that time, Louis, I saw you put in the chat the listening campaign. Can you tell us more? Yes. Great, absolutely. Listening campaign is held by our civic engagement organizer, Nikki Franco, and really is about like us deeply building in our community. And is a door knocking, historically has been a door knocking campaign, but throughout the last year and the pandemic was all phone making campaign around getting out the vote, looking at and really understanding school board members that were running for different districts. What's their platform? What are they offering for young people? What are they not offering for young people? How are they centering and valuing young people's voice? And we do that every year. It's all hands on deck. Folks are really building and doing door knocking and talking to their neighbors. Our neighbors are in District 2. We span across the district from Overtown all the way back into Liberty City, Little Haiti, Hialeah. We're out there, right? And so that is the listening campaign. And from that, we usually have town halls or engagement sessions where members can, like, if they're interested, or community members, if they're interested and want to build with us, see themselves aligned, can come out and be a part of our different committees, the Reproductive Justice Committee, the Civic Engagement Committee, the Counselors Not Cops Committee, and the Safe Schools Committee. And so in the background, this is our Schools on Fire website. And I just wanted to show it. We can share the links after. But it essentially talks about all the ways that our different campaigns really equal an unsafe and a harmful environment for young people in the schools, right? And we historically did research where we talked about the amount of gender violence that happens between teachers and students, between young people and people in authority. So that could be school resource officers, that could be police officers. And so this is a germination of that, and is work that we continue to do as we really craft organizing around these phases, and these phases really being around the school board budget cycle. So really centering that finances, we say, like, your money tells you your priorities. Our money tells us, and how the school board allocates our money tells us what they care about and what they don't care about, what they center and what they don't center. And so really seeing it integral to organize around that cycle and that calendar. Kinjo, you can go to the next slide. All right. So this is our strategy chart. This is the Midwest Academy strategy chart. And we've used this because it's super helpful around just when we are mapping out our different campaigns, what are we thinking about, or how are we assessing power, right? How are we assessing different considerations? And so the Midwest organizing chart is a great guide, a great resource for folks, and really takes into account, like, identifying long-term goals. Are we thinking ahead 5 years? Are we trying to flip the state and make it a state that has comprehensive sex ed written into its constitution? Then what are our intermediate goals? How are we making sure that Miami-Dade County puts a new policy in? Broward County, which is our neighboring county to the north, put a new policy in. The county even north of that, Palm Beach County, put a new policy in. Excuse me. Put a new policy in, and new curriculum. And so what does it mean that Miami-Dade County is still having different curriculum that is not comprehensive, right? What does that mean? And so then we went to short-term goals. Like, how are we making sure that the the curriculum being taught is evidence-based, is medically accurate. Why are we paying for bad curriculum? Miami-Dade County was paying for bad curriculum, right? And so that was something that we really identified. And then as you go through the strategy chart, it really has you grapple with like, what is your organizational considerations? We are a small organization. We have a staff of about 10. So that is something that you built into your strategy chart. What internal problems do we have? Do we have a problem with capacity? Do we have a problem with our organizing? Like what are the different things? Constituency, people power. So who do you rock with? We rock with young people. Who do they rock with, right? What do they care about? So what problem most directly impacts folks? What are the risks? And who are the folks against us? Who are our opponents? Who are the folks that are not aligned, right? And that gets us to the decision maker or the target. How are we identifying the target? What interests do they have in the work that we're moving and the things that we care about, right? Because our district is District 2. It's by our school board members, Dorothy Bendergrass Mendigal, and she has been in her seat a long time. She's deeply loved by all the elders in the community, but oftentimes does not take meetings with us, right? And so what are the implications of that? And then how does that inform our tactics? Kendra, next slide, please. And so this is a link to our comprehensive sex education, our ecosystem strategy chart. Can folks see that? Is it not working? Ooh, sorry, Kendra. I can make sure to share that moving forward. I can make sure folks have access to that, but that really went into kind of our approach on how we utilize the strategy chart document as a tool. In the meantime, I'll make sure to fix that. And then we can move forward. So this is a diagram of a document, a mailer that we sent out throughout our campaign, and in the midst of it, where we did some research where we collected a couple hundred responses from young people in the district. And so these are some of the survey demographics, and this was some of the literature that we passed out on the doors. And so just wanted to show an example of that. So let me try to, Kendra, are you still having issues with the complex ed chart? In the meantime, we can go to the next slide. Sorry about that. And so how do you develop asks or demands? I keep talking about this phase cycle, and I went into it a bit, but I want to make sure folks are really clear about what I mean. And so the different phases kind of inform what we focus on at the time, and are really steered by our young people in terms of what are their needs, what do they see, what are the things that they're experiencing in the day-to-day, and how does that inform their experience at schools? How does that inform how they show up? And so our phases have been around the school board budget, because we've seen that a lot of what is informing our young people's experience is that, yes, our schools are severely underfunded. They are. We acknowledge that, but also that money is being put into different priorities that are not priorities for young people. And so that has a lot of implications. And so let me go into the phases. Phase 1 is the orientation phase. That's the phase that's actually happening right now at Powering You. It is 6 to 8 weeks. Folks are meeting 3 and 4 times a week on alternating weeks, doing deep political education, learning about the legacy that is Power You, because we want folks to know that we're part of a very rich organizing tradition, relational organizing. We didn't make it up, right? It is a rich tradition. And so really going into like how folks' lived experiences is also related and informed different by their lived experience, right? Like, so how your lived experience is informed by what you are experiencing in schools in terms of these punitive measures, in school suspension, um, the increased police in schools, right? And then lack of access to mental health counselors and lack of access to folks that are able to have real conversations with you. Then we go into phase 2, which is our research. This is my favorite phase. I love research. And this is where we make our demands. And this is informed by, again, this is where our listening campaign happens. We're also having intense community sessions, right? And really crafting and looking at what has happened in the district historically and how that informs how people are showing up or how young people are being affected. And so this is largely how we develop our demands in conjunction with community members and young people. We're building our base at the same time. Then we have phase 3, community town halls and PE sessions, so political education sessions. Phase 4, our mobilization. Again, we showing up and showing out. And then phase 5, which is where we talk about our lessons learned, how we move forward, what are some considerations in this new year, and also like processing. We're always in a state of processing and recruiting. So how are we building with other young people? How are the other young people able to see the dope things we're doing and be a part of it, right? If they want to. Kinja, the next slide. Oh, thank you. You're already there. So this is our reproductive justice demands. This is the actual demands we were pushing in our school board in front of Dr. Dorothy. And so we were talking, first of all, we don't have a nurse in our schools throughout every day throughout the week. We just don't. Our funding has been cut, but there's multiple police officers. And so with Parkland happened. Parkland was a tragedy, a shooting tragedy that happened in Florida and happened in our backyard, essentially. And the commission that came together mandated that the police officer had to be in every school. And so that is our reality, right? But what was happening in our schools, which are of working class Black and brown folks, was that there were multiple police officers, 6 police officers. Some of our young people were even reported having 13 police officers at their school, right? And not having relationships, not feeling that they could come to them. And so we wanted to make sure that money was being pulled from that and reallocated from that and put into nurses, put into folks that are trained to have these medically accurate conversations with young people around things like consent, their options, contraceptives, discussing and healing and finding resources for trauma. So, and that's not currently our reality. And then we wanted to have the curriculum be changed. So Advocates for Youth has some really dope curriculum. And in our organizing throughout that year, we were able to get the curriculum changed from Miami-Dade County to the 3 Arts curriculum. So that was a really big win for us. But yeah, really making sure we had medically accurate, age appropriate, and LGBTQ welcoming curriculum that doesn't stigmatize young people, but like allows and emphasizes and encourages young people to be experts of their lived experience. We want to have sex education that openly discusses trauma, but also healing from trauma, right? And a review board so that gender violence and sexual allegations and assault allegations are reviewed and heard. Miami-Dade County just had to pay out millions, and I mean this in the past year, for their inactiveness and harm that has happened in the district, and that's because of a lack of investment, right? And then a policy that is explicit in mandating comprehensive sex education. So how do you do an Invest Divest campaign in your city? I wanted to make this real simple, but yeah, it's base building. You have to have folks that believe and want this, right? Because it has to be informed by the community. One-to-ones. Our young people have metrics of having at least 3 to one-to-ones a week, and different metrics for the folks they bring into our events or spaces, right? And so how are we like really living out that deep relational organizing? A power analysis. What power do you have? That's where that Midwest Academy strategy chart comes in. We're really trying to see what the conditions are and how we are able to move in that time. And then structure tests, I kind of briefly talked about this, but this is something we've recently started incorporating into our organizing, which is organizers had a school that they were focused on building out, right? A school that I built out and really contributed to building out was iTech. iTech is a small tech magnet school and had about 250 young people, or about 300 young people. It just started, or just came to be. And I was able to help build that out. And now we're at a critical mass of like 30 or 40 young people just from iTech, but in a school of 250, that has a lot of impact, right? And there's a lot of power there. And so that is super important. Structure tests. I do have a Jamboard activity that I would want folks to engage in. Kenjo, can you click that? We'll just take a few minutes because I feel like I'm running low on time.
Yes. Do you want me to drop the link in the chat?
Yes, please. Thank you. So folks, this is a Jamboard. It's something we've been engaging in this new virtual normal, where it's basically like a whiteboard, or like a whiteboard where anyone can add to it. And so the question on the Jamboard is, what InvestDive campaigns do you want to do in your schools, your communities, your areas? I wanted to put that there. And then if you look to the left, the fourth icon from the top is a sticky note. You click on that and you can add to it. And so I just wanted to have a space where folks could add to it. Thanks for that, Emily. Just saw a message. So yeah, okay. So we have more time. I just wanted to make sure we're on the know. So yeah, if we could take a couple of minutes, let's start with like 4 or 5 minutes. And if in the meantime, if maybe we could play that dope playlist I was playing at the beginning, folks can have a chance to really talk about what you've seen in your communities and possible investor divest campaigns. I see some things populating in. Yes. Okay, folks, no rush on the time. So take the time you need. Really excited to kind of talk through some of these responses. Thank you, Tamara, regarding the music. Appreciate you. Great. Okay, so I see some responses on the Jamboard. So we have divest from schools and invest in sexual violence, harassment prevention, and survivor support and resources. This is a really good one. We definitely talk about what it looks like to have comprehensive sex education, and we advocate for and organize around education that starts in kindergarten and goes through senior year of high school, right? Because Power U, we don't feel like education in college is enough, right? Folks need to learn things about general consent, and you don't have to hug everyone, right? You don't have to hug folks, even if they're relatives. We have a lot of folks that are Latinx, and we always say, like, you don't have to kiss all your family members on the cheek if you don't feel comfortable, right? And so how are we having these early conversations on consent and what that looks like? And so I think that's a really good one. That's a really amazing one. Thank you for putting that down. We have investing in educational curriculum that promotes consent, again, bodily autonomy, gender and sexuality. Yes, we are very youth pleasure positive. And that has been an adjustment for some of our partners, but young people have pleasure. Young people experience pleasure, deserve and want pleasure. And so we want to talk about it unapologetically. Divest from police and other anti-homeless, yes, we say houseless systems, and invest in systems of healing for sexual violence and mental health, absolutely. Divesting from policing and investing in more free to low cost housing. That's amazing you said that. We have an event called Black Girls Day at the Capitol every year. And last year, their legislative priority was rent control and affordable housing. So that is something that is definitely a major topic for us in Miami. And I've been recently relocating, so it's been an interesting change, but absolutely. Yeah, affordable healthcare. Oh, Los Angeles. So you feel me. All right. Divest from cops and prisons and invest in housing, education, mental health, and food programs. Yes. And intersectionality. I see intersectionality, race, ethnicity, overall intersectionality in government, social services, civics class curriculum. Yes. Can we get civics classes? Our young people don't even get those, right? And so a lot of our discussions have been around how our members from varying districts across Miami-Dade County have different experiences on the quality of education they even receive. A lot of our schools, a worry for us is like them closing our schools down because they're at like 50 and 60% capacity, and they are literally not receiving any sort of resources or funding support in a real way. And in the pandemic, our budget will further be cut. So if I don't think I said it before, but our budget at Miami-Dade County is $6 billion, $6.2 billion. And so we are, again, the largest district in Florida, but we are still way underfunded. Our funding ends up being about, I think it's like $70 per child. It's probably less than that. And as opposed to like an example of a well-resourced area or location would be Boston, who has like, I want to say $7,000 per child in terms of what is allocated when we talk about a cost per child, because that's how they quantify these things. And it's really messed up. Yes, low cost housing. Thanks so much for folks who added richness to this Jamboard. Survival support services and resources. Thanks so much, y'all. Yeah, we do have a budget, y'all, or Sydney explicitly, 6.2 billion, and we're still underfunded, severely underfunded at that. Kinjo, we were so while we were waiting, we were able to get this document, our sex ed strategy chart up. Thanks so much, Kinjo. And so this is an example of how we mapped out our sex ed campaign, specifically to how we mapped it out as it relates to our ecosystem, which was the 3 organizations involved, and how that affected what tactics we use, and how we engaged with our school board members and our community members at large. So long-term, we wanted sex ed. But we knew that was a long-term goal because we were a place that was abstinence plus, abstinence positive. We had school board members that were like, that is needed. Like, we wouldn't say it wasn't needed, but they would say, my district ain't gonna go for it. And so we knew that was something we were working towards. And again, I took this up in 2018. It had been going since 2016, 2015. And so our intermediate goal was a policy and MDCP that mandates sex education be taught in all schools, K through 12. And then our short-term goal, or one of our short-term goals, if you go down a bit, Kendra, can you scroll down just a little bit? Oh, yeah. So we go into our intermediate goals, and I'm only gonna glaze this over, but folks, I can make sure there's a PDF shared around kind of some of the direction around this. And so some of our intermediate goals surrounded around fighting for resolution. And so we wanted to build support for comprehensive sex education, and knew that a resolution would do that. And then we also fought for Gender Violence Advisory Board, like a youth board that really were the experts and talked about kind of their experiences. Can you go to the top again? So sorry. So organizational considerations, if you go into it, we talked about the funding, the staff time that was involved. When we're doing these strategy charts, we're taking everything into account, because it all has an impact. Our constituents, so who cares about the issues? Students, teachers, we're in the midst of making a teachers caucus right now and have been trying that on for a couple of years. Community members, health professionals, what do nurses think? A lot of my work stemmed around training and building with young people to then have one-to-ones with nurses to talk about kind of their experiences working with young people in Miami-Dade County, working with families. And then also turning religious leaders, like building with folks and making sure that we are having conversations on young people and consent and sex in the church and trying to. And then we went to our targets. So, and how do we make craft demands? We looked at our target. I talked about Dr. Dorothy. Little Haiti is the largest settlement of Haitian folks outside of Haiti, the country. And so there's a lot of, right now it's in our geographic map of Miami, it's way above sea level. It's like 18 feet, 16 to 18 feet above sea level. And so there's massive gentrification happening in Little Haiti right now. And what are the implications of that? In Little Haiti Square in District 2. Again, Dr. Dorothy's love, she was recently reelected. We literally went through some of the our district members, the ones that are in districts, either our district or districts like ours. And then these are some tactics that we engaged in. So we had teach backs, youth regional trainings. We held a really dope one that Kendra took a part of and held a really big part of. Shout out to Kendra. A sex ed conference for health professionals at the Mailman Center. So we also had, and we're planning and was literally about to have a conference for differently abled young people and their parents around talking and building and moving around sex education and encouraging sex positivity for those folks. And then the pandemic happened, but we've been doing events around that. You can scroll down, Kinjo. And then this goes into some of our other tactics around the comm strategy. We identified about 4 school board members that we were really taking into account. And you scroll down a little bit more. I just want to make sure folks can see all the way bottom. Yeah, and we were also working to organize to make our district, Miami-Dade County, it's a WISE district. So WISE stands for Working to Institutionalize Sex Education, and we were able to help make that happen. And that meant that paper curriculums were sent, full curriculums of the 3 R's were sent to teachers. Teachers engaged and trained the trainers and got incentives like getting paid, because we know teachers are severely underpaid, right, for the labor that they do. And so getting paid to teach us additional information, and also moving to highlight the fact that there weren't nurses in every school all week, and then work to change that. And so even in this past year, we got a commitment from, or the school board saying that with the pandemic, extra crucial for there to be a nurse in every school. And so we really organized in this last iteration around menstrual equity and sanitary products, and also as it relates to sex education. And just as an FYI, we are actually, again, I think I said at the beginning, but facing a bill that is really trying to restrict the implementation and the teaching of sex education in Florida. So we're constantly being under attack for young people to have access to the things that they need. Do you folks have any questions on the sex ed strategy chart while we're on it? I know I was going a mile a minute. And again, I can double check and make sure it's okay to share and share with folks at the end of the training. Folks have any questions? And it's okay, I gave y'all a lot. So if you don't, even after I'm down and open to answer any questions or kind of talk about more about our process at Power U. Okay, if folks don't have questions, Kendra, can you go back to the PowerPoint? Let's see. Okay, and so this is an example of some of the things that we've done literally in our phases. And so that looks like some of our targets and our metrics, because we have metrics. And so I talked a little bit about that before. Young people at least having 3 one-to-ones a week, having a certain target of young people or folks to engage to come to our events. And so this is an example of a metric is mobilizing at least 100 folks to flood public comments regarding sex, regarding gender violence, and the need for more comprehensive curriculum. And so this is literally an example of what we work through throughout the months. Not all of them are labeled, but they're all definitely things that we engaged in. Do folks have any questions about that? I feel like I'm going a mile a minute, so I want to make sure that folks are with me. And then again, if you see at the top, we have, we were very explicit about having numbers tied to how many people we're engaging. So that's parents, that's young people, that's community members, that's teachers. We were really trying to build deep with our teachers union, which is our Miami-Dade, our UTD. Teachers union was one of the bigger unions, but hasn't historically engaged with their power to support teachers, really fought for teachers in a race, but that hasn't actualized in a way that has been very, very fulfilling or helpful for teachers, for all teachers, I should say. Okay, so I just wanted, as I was like cruising, we really also talked about changing the discussion around sex ed. So how are we destigmatizing young people in sex? I've served on a lot of like coalition boards, and it's always like the young people are doing this thing, and it's so like it's very much othering, right? And so it's been very intentional for us to talk about young people and pleasuring young people in sex in a way that like a young person doesn't just become a person when they're 18. Like you're always a person, you're engaging in this world, and how are we being unbiased and seeing our young people for their full selves. So that's been a major underscoring of the work that we do, and young people will make sure and say like, hey, this is how this needs to be changed. This is how we engage with it. This is our experience. How are folks doing? Are folks with me? And thank you so much, interpreters. I feel like I'm going a mile a minute. Yes, okay, awesome. So this brings me to the questions portion of what I've presented and offered today. I'm so excited to just hear from folks any comments. It doesn't have to just be questions. And yeah, Shelby, it's a lot. We engage with it. We learn new things all the time. Yes, I'm excited. I'm excited to hear from folks. You're like, I thought I had a question. Now I got even more. Oh, Jihana, thank you for raising this again. I saw it and then got wrapped up. So writing demands, how many drafts are typically made, of any? So yes, we had multiple drafts. I think we had between 2 and 3 drafts in the actual, from these actual demands that I presented. And even every year, depending upon folks, how we are able to move and the power we're building in sex ed, those things change and are adapted. So at least 2 to 3 for us, but that looks a lot different for different organizations. Hope that answered your question. Any other folks? You're welcome. Okay, if there aren't any questions, how are folks? Okay, we got a question. But I do want to know and want to offer, how are folks thinking about ways that they can incorporate an Investive framework into their lived experience and their locales? So that's something I just want to put out there. But Tara put a question: how do you destigmatize young folks in sex? That's a good question. So I think that is really young folks being able to be open and feel safe. We do a lot of restorative justice circles. We've got harm circles. We hold a lot of circles, and it's a constant thing, right? Because we're digesting all of this negativity, all of these things that have been put in our faces every day about ourselves, our bodies, things we should and should not do, how society identifies and sees us, how our family should engage with us. And so that is something that is a constant learning that happens. We are checked, our young people check each other in ways that are grounded, like in love, right? Because we have guidelines and we have things that we all agree to, but also, yeah, people are gonna potentially engage in harm. And so how are we talking through that and moving at a place that young people can feel seen and feel whole and can move forward? It's a constant battle of talking and also holding the folks that we build and do and are in coalition with accountable for how they show up for young people. Young people aren't just figureheads; they have voices and they are their own folks. And you need to yield your time and allow young people to take center stage, and young people will take center stage even regardless. Any other questions? Any responses to my question? Thank you.
Well, y'all are more than welcome to ask any questions as we move on. But first off, y'all, can we thank Samantha for coming into this space and being with us and sharing all of your knowledge. We truly appreciate you and being here. I know that I've been taking notes this whole entire